So did you finally get to see the football game?
I did. I saw it this afternoon.
Well, what'd you think?
Well, let me start by something that happened a few days before the football game. I had a text communication with my brother. I had asked for a little more information on our buddy Mitch, and so it went into something about it went into football, and he said to me, I'll quote this as best I can, and see if this sounds familiar to me. But this was my brother talking. He said, "I realize they've lost 2 football games this year on the last play of the game by a total of 4 points, and that's it." He said, "But there is something wrong with this team. There's something missing." Now, he's probably been the closest person in my life in a lot of different ways, but definitely where Alabama football was concerned for an awful long time. And he sees the same thing I do. And I don't know what, the idiot announcers that were on Saturday's game that I saw this afternoon were talking about how, they tried to pin it on the fact that we don't have really good receivers on this team, that we have some possibly really good receivers, but they're all young and they haven't really gelled with the quarterback. And I just can't believe that's all there is to this.
I can't swallow that one.
I understand the stats. If you whip all that information into a computer and pile it out, then it tells you that for as long as we can remember back to Julio Jones in the first year or two, we had a receiver that was that had 1,000 yards receiving and could go up and make the catch no matter what else was out there, and can find a way to get open when you needed somebody to get open. And if nothing else, he could scare the defense enough that you could run the football or throw a little screen to somebody on the other side of the field and make it go for the winning touchdown against LSU or whatever it might need to be done. You had that happen, but there's just too many little, and they're like lapses. It's a combination. We talked about this. I think we talked about it for the Ole Miss game, but I know we've talked about it before. There's some things that I qualify as being snake bit. It's things that aren't necessarily a glaring problem on the surface. I mean, when you jump off sides on a 3rd and 3 by the other team, when they're trying to get you to jump off sides, I realize that was probably a 3rd-team defensive lineman, but when you do stuff like that, that's your fault. But when you're running down the field on a punt and the punt hits you in the back of the head, you got to give God a little credit for that one. I know he shouldn't be there, and I know that's a lack of communication, and I know the guy should have known that, you got to look up at some point and try to find the football. I know there are all kinds of things that fall into that, but still, that's a really unusual thing. That's different a little bit than the guy against Tennessee that tried to reach in there and grab the football. I mean, the guy running down trying to get to where the ball was going to come down, and it hit him in the back of the head. Now, so I realized he wasn't where he was supposed to be and probably wasn't in the position he was supposed to be in, but still, I bet if you line that punter up and gave him 50 tries to try to hit that guy in the same spot with a punt, he couldn't do it.
Yeah, to hit a moving target when you don't know where that target's going next.
That's why I say there's been
you got better chances of lightning hitting you.
And I realize in this game, those guys never had a chance to beat us. I will say the officiating was horrible, like it always is. The announcers, as I expected them to be, were about as bad as I've ever heard. They were the 8th and 9th team broadcast team for whatever network they were working for. That's just the way that shit goes.
But that's what happens when you're a shitty 2-loss team.
That was the other thing my brother said when he said
in week 12. Aren't we going into week 12 now? Or are we going into 13?
I think it's week 12.
Okay. I mean,
Well, this is the kind of shit you get in the Poland Weed Eater bowl or something like that. So,
Well, yeah. And after the way we've played this year, we'll be lucky to get that one.
Yeah. I think we're going to get a top tier New Year's Day bowl because there's just not that many people in front of us to, if you think about, and you really can't do that. And it's probably not fair to those kids that are playing too. But, if you look at the things, the one I just mentioned, they've lost 2 games on the last play of the game, both incredible plays by the other team. One was a stroke of luck. I mean, a guy hits a knuckleball field goal that by all rights shouldn't have gone through the uprights and did. If that hits the upright and bounces back or just catches the wind different, we win that game.
Yeah, but we had 59 minutes and 48 seconds to change the whole outcome of it.
We lost. We went a long way toward losing that game when that idiot dove in there and tried to pick up that punt so he could with it and be the hero.
Yeah.
That turned that game around to a large extent. I mean, look what South Carolina did to Tennessee.
Yeah, but that don't matter. Tennessee wasn't pumped for South Carolina like they was for Alabama, so that's not even a fair argument.
When you hold them to 3 and out and force a punt, if you take that ball and go down
I narrow our 2-loss mediocre season so far to it's either chemistry within the players or it seems to me that Alabama's historically been old school football.
Yeah.
Tough defense. We're going to run it down your throat. Things changed. People started figuring out how to defeat that. I think we're still behind the time when it comes to current styles. I think the other teams have just figured out how to defeat us, and we don't have them all. We don't have all the players we usually have. We don't have Julio or Deontay.
I will wait one more year before I will start thinking along those lines. I'm of the opinion that people, I mean, when you think about it, and it kind of goes back a little bit, because I thought about that, this whole thing, what we're talking about right now, while I was watching the replay, when the idiot announcer started talking about not having a dominant receiver. And
bullshit. You were thinking about it when we were playing Texas A&M after the shitty game against Texas, and even early in the year, I know I was thinking, man, look, something's not right. We're not clicking.
But let me just lay out a theory.
Okay.
Up until about it started changing in reality in 2012. 2010, we'll throw that year out because we lost 3 games that year. That was the year Cam Newton had the cam back, and that was the year Steven Garcia woke up for whatever reason. I guess he needed some better drugs or something. Woke up for one weekend and, played like
right
Montana or somebody.
Yeah.
Listen, they should have, and they did basically the same thing that they did to Tennessee this past weekend. But with the exception of those 2 games, the real turning point for Alabama as a defensive power started happening in 2012. Remember, we lost 1 game to LSU, and it was a 6-9 ball game, and we got a really bad call on a completion on a pass at a time when it was either 6-3 or 3-3. Our guy went up and caught a pass, our tight end, and as he came down, he hit the ground while he was fighting with their All-American safety. And while he was laying on his back, the safety took the ball away from him. And instant replay was in its infancy that year. They gave it to LSU. LSU stopped us. They beat us 6-9. A little over a month later, they didn't cross midfield against our defense.
Right.
2 months after that, in a basketball game. Their basketball team about 4 minutes into the basketball game.
Right. They crossed midfield, and all of Alabama's fans stood up and gave them standing ovation. Hey, y'all finally crossed midfield.
The Alabama fan on earth that saw that thought it was cool, and I thought it was cool. But from that point on, their defense started having holes in it. And they still won a bunch of games because they started putting an offense together. 2013 and 2014 and 2015, they brought Lane Kiffin in. They had a wide open offense. Most of our games, if you go back and look at the big games that we won and the big games that we lost, they were all close ball games, high scoring games. We didn't shut hardly anybody out where it was a close ball game. If the other team, as Gary Danielson loves to still say, if you got a hot quarterback, you can handle Alabama. And we still basically play the same defense, but we don't play the defense to expect to hold LSU or Tennessee or Georgia to 0. We expect to hold them to 21. And we're going to get 28 or 35 and win that game. When we don't get our 38, our 25, 28 or 35, then we lose. And that's kind of what I see here. But having said that, I don't think there's any question that there's something going on that we may never know what it was. There's something that's not really clicking because there's too many mental breakdowns. There's too many times when the defense doesn't do what they should do on every play. There's too many times where a guy gets hit in the hands with a football and it drops. There's too many times when you get a holding penalty on a big play, or you get a man downfield on a 22-yard gain in the red zone, or your guy jumps off sides when it's 3rd and 3 and gives them a first down. And those things happen Saturday against a team that had no way of beating.
Well, and every one of those is discipline. Exactly. Are you watching the ball into your hands before you take that next step? Are you partially relaxed when you're in your 3-point stance?
Well, I tell you what,
waiting for the signal. I mean, it's discipline.
With 2 games left to go, I tell you what I'm going to do. I'm going to go ahead and assume that we're going to play against Auburn the same way. I think we'll be more excited. I think we'll go out with it being senior day, that we'll play with a lot more intensity. That's probably the thing that I'm seeing.
I hope we do.
That's not something that's not a new thing either. Because you can go back to the first year of 4-team playoffs when we played Ohio State. We had a 21-3 lead late in the second quarter. Had a 3rd and 8, driving the ball again, and we hit our tight end just across the first down marker right here. And he was looking over here when the ball hit his hands. So we ended up punting. And the next thing I knew, we lost that football game. Those motherfuckers won the national title. Now, we basically did that. We did the same thing against Oklahoma 2 years later. I mean, against Oklahoma, where we just went out and scored at will on them, and then let their Heisman Trophy candidate just run up and down the field on us. They never got close to us because their defense was so bad. But we went into the championship game against Clemson thinking that we already had that national championship won, and we had a pick 6 in the first quarter against us, and we got beat by 3 touchdowns. So some of that shit has been happening all along.
And stuff like that, I do expect to happen in championship games and in playoff games and what used to be bowl games, but now that we expect to be in championship and playoff games, bowl games really don't mean as much to us. But yeah, that it's
Well, here's what I will say.
the goals have changed.
My belief is, yeah, bowls have changed a lot, and we're going to find that out this week. I mean, not this week, but in about a month and a half. My attitude is, like I said, I would like to believe that we're going to play with a lot of emotion and be upbeat against Auburn, and because we're a lot better than them, that we're going to win that game handily. I still think we'll have 2 or 3 lapses. We'll get a guy will get wide open because one of our defenders went the wrong way, or we'll have a penalty when we shouldn't, or something like that. But I really think we'll play at a level that will keep that game out of reach. I'm hoping that we'll get a bowl game, some against somebody like Michigan or Clemson, or a New Year's Day bowl game, a Sugar Bowl, or an Orange Bowl, or something like that. I think
yeah, but another every year top 10 team that
exactly.
Every now and then gets in the last 4.
Because here's what's going to happen. Georgia,
another fallen brother.
I realized that after what happened to Tennessee last weekend, I realized some crazy shit could happen, because I still thought Tennessee had a really good chance of going to the playoffs until they got manhandled by a team that has shown absolutely that no ability to manhandle somebody like Tennessee. Now I realize their quarterback, was lost for the year, but they were not going to win that game well before he got hurt. I mean, they cut it to within like a 5-point game, and South Carolina scored 3 more touchdowns before the guy got hurt. So, but if we and I would be okay if Bryce Young and some of the other guys that aren't going to be here next year go ahead and just say, okay, we're not going to play in the bowl game. That works for me, because one of the things about the only value to a regular bowl game anymore is that it gives you a chance to practice and then play your younger guys that are going to be on your team next year. And I like what I see in Milroe, but he's got to get a lot better than he is, or next year they're going to be talking about the lapse in quarterback play compared to the last 3 or 4 we've had. So,
see, I didn't think he looked that bad, the couple of games that he started.
He didn't, but if you compare him, it's not fair, I understand, but when you compare him to Bryce Young, there's a big gap there. Now, if they run an offense where he can do different things, more of a run-pass option kind of thing, he's bigger and stronger than Bryce Young, and they can, run that. They can give him an offense like they gave Jalen Hurts. I think they can be a lot more. I don't know if you got to see much of the Eagles past weekend, but I'd like that guy to be a quarterback again. First, and Milroe can be that guy. Jalen Hurts was not a great passer when he was at Alabama, but he was damn sure a great leader, and evidently still is.
Right. Well, and Mac Jones was the same thing.
Yeah.
He was. But that still goes back to the leadership. Exactly. So, and maybe it's not a lack of it. Maybe there's too much of it.
You never know what it is, and I don't know that we'll ever know what it is. It's just,
well, we're not supposed to. We're only fans. We're not part of the process
that we do, and all the fans do about. I do hope, and this is. I don't think this is a real problem. I saw some plays in this weekend's game that I hadn't seen in a while. They ran a couple of plays, quick pitches outside, and like the old Green Bay sweep where they started running the ball and got 2 blockers in front of them. They did some things in this game that they haven't done all year long.
Right, and that's
so.
Yeah, what we've been doing is no longer working. Maybe we should mix it up a little bit.
See, that's one of the things that fit into this overall thing. When you had a defense where you knew if the other team got 20, they were going to come out on Sunday morning after the next game, even if we won it 68-20. They were going to be running wind sprints on Sunday and they would do it without coaches because 20 was unacceptable.
Right.
It's not like that anymore. So
right,
struggling, then all of a sudden the other team's defense thinks they're good. The other team's offense relaxes and starts doing their thing instead of thinking, well, we got to keep up. They just, well, fuck,
right.
We're okay. So I think it's more complicated than we think. It always is, but I think there's issues there. I think it's all like, and it's, every year there's a different chemistry. They can talk about the Alabama standard all they want to, but every year a good bit of that team changes between then and the next year. There's always some people that leave that you really need, whether they're starters or not, and there's always some people that come in that you really shouldn't have, that come in there and do something that kind of just changes things just a little bit. So, I'm going to give them. I'm not going to get concerned until I see what happens next year and see where we go from there. It would be, I think the best thing in the world that could happen to Alabama, number one, is they give Pete Golden a raise, because under the circumstances in today's world, I think their defense has done great. They've made some mental mistakes that were not the fault of the coaches. They were the fault of players, not communicating with each other. But I don't know that they'll find so unless Kirby Smart gets fired by Georgia and needs a job. I don't know that we'll find a better defensive coordinator than Pete Golden, because he's basically doing exactly what Nick Saban tells him to do. Now, as far as offense, I think that if what's his name gets a job back in the NFL this coming year, then and we get some young guy, some hot young one of the guys that's now getting jobs to be the head coach in the NFL, some great offensive genius, a Lane Kiffin, if you will.
Yeah, a West Coast guy.
A West. It doesn't necessarily have to be a West Coast. The Southwestern guys are great too.
Yeah, West Coast is where the cutting edge of the offenses usually comes from.
Yeah. Well, if we can, I don't think there's any question that the best offensive coordinator we had since Saban has been there was Lane Kiffin. He was exciting. He understood how to do the offense. He knew things to do to set up something else. And yet we didn't win a national title every year that he was our offensive coordinator. And him and Nick didn't get along in a lot of ways. If you remember that he left to go to Florida Atlantic, where it was, he got fired and sent off while we were trying to prepare for a bowl game. So, but he was, as far as a technical offensive coordinator, the guy that understands how offenses work and how defenses react and how you do things to influence. And my favorite part of that, there's a play that Alabama's been running since long before Lane Kiffin got there, where you line up a tight end and a wide receiver way out on one side, and you throw the ball to the wide receiver, and the tight end blocks for him. And they ran that play for a long time, and always had somebody that could, all he had to do was get one block and make one guy miss, and he was off for 20 or 30 yards.
Yeah, but it's been figured out, and you're pixelating real bad. So let's end it by saying fuck Auburn.
Okay, I can say that. Fuck Auburn. I'm good with that, and so we'll see what happens. Have a good Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Tell Jake I said hi and I love him, and I will. Sometime tomorrow I'll start working on crawfish